Welcome to Elevate at Home. I'm Mike Barker.
And I'm Samantha Barker.
And we're your team behind Elevate, where we build dream outdoor spaces like custom hardscapes, pools, and more.
On this podcast, we'll take you behind the scenes of our industry, sharing insights, answering your questions, and giving you an inside look at our projects.
Plus, we'll be joined with industry experts, other business owners, and even our customers to share their experiences.
Whether you're planning a project, in the industry, or just love great outdoor spaces, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in. This is Elevate at Home. All right, welcome back to Elevate at Home. We are diving into one of the biggest topics when homeowners are deciding to buy a pool, and that is, what pool should I buy? So we're going to be breaking down the pros and cons between three different styles of pools: Gunite, Fiberglass, and Vinyl. And what are the key things to consider and what might work for you. So if you're considering a pool installation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review on this podcast, and follow us on our socials for more good information. But let's dive in.
All right, sounds good.
So the first one, I want to get it right out of the way. It's going to be Gunite pools.
All right.
You know, so there's three different pools, right? There is Fiberglass, Vinyl, and Gunite.
Yes.
Concrete, shotcrete. There's many different names for it, but it is a concrete pool. And the way that I like to describe these pools is it's if you dream it, we can build it type pool, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of the ones that you see on just completely, crazy.
Yeah, HGTV and all these different channels. If you're watching a show and they're building a pool, it's most likely a Gunite pool.
Just the ones that are just really crazy free form, swim up bars, grotto, swim under grottos, all those sorts of things. So those are typically Gunite pools. You can do them on, some high-end vinyl pools, but it's pretty difficult. But some of the pros of them is obviously just the customization. The customization of what you can do in them is literally limitless. And so hooking up with a good builder, you're really able to just dream up some wild stuff.
And so that was one of the things I was going to say is that is the only type of pool that we do not install.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't do Gunite. Typically, it's a big sub out process, and it's just not something that we see ourselves getting into, even though we love doing big design build projects. We get a few calls every year for Gunite pools, but I just don't think we're really into that.
Well, and so I think that goes into some of the cons of doing a Gunite pool.
Yeah, so some of the cons, I would say, leading into that is the time of installation. It's just a longer drawn out process. And so you've got, your dig out, you're forming with your rebar, you got plumbing. I'm not a Gunite guy, so I'm shooting from the hip here, but then you're shooting your concrete or your shotcrete. And then you've got 28 days to let that cure. And then you go into your plaster, your tile, and all the other things that go along with it. So, it's a very long process. And, the ones that we've seen are typically 3 to 6 months.
And so that being said, because it is such an involved process, another big con of the Gunite pools is the cost.
The cost, yeah. Yeah, typically what we've seen is they're going to be at the higher price point of, an in-ground pool, just everything that goes along with it. There's a lot of people involved in it. There's a lot of people involved in the pool process, but very few companies can take that on completely. So there's a lot of sub work, and there's just a lot that goes into it. So again, it's just if you can dream it, they'll build it, which is a really cool aspect of it.
Huge draw of those types of pools.
But I think for most people that we deal with, most people in our area, Gunite is not. It's not the answer.
Especially where we're at, because, we live in an area where you're only using your pool probably 6 months at most out of the year. Putting that extra cost into this custom pool when there are other options doesn't really make a lot of sense for most people.
Yeah, and a lot of times, people want a spa in their pool. And as, you can create whatever size spa, whatever kind of spa, round, curved, whatever you want to do. There's other options that you can have that pool spa combo in fiberglass. So you can have that all one piece shell, and that kind of leads us into our next pool, which is fiberglass. So that is what we started with installing pools.
Yeah, fiberglass is my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we started with. Here we're going on year 5 of our pool uh, installation division of our company, and so essentially it's a molded shell. It gets made in a factory. We use a couple different manufacturers, one out of Tennessee, one out of West Virginia. They have plants all over, but West Virginia, and then we actually have another one that's manufactured in Australia, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Very high quality pools. A little bit tougher to get with the logistics, but so
But
some of the
if they're made in Australia, they're made to last because they get a lot more sun
Yep.
than we do here.
Yep. They're very, very high quality shells. So, one of the biggest cons is the structure itself. It's very durable. One of the big things when I'm asking people, which pool is right for you is, do you plan on having any animals in it? So a lot of people, if they have bigger dogs that want to swim, that kind of kicks out, like a vinyl liner pool. So then we'll start talking about fiberglass. But another thing is the lower maintenance aspect of it. So the stronger gel coat, it doesn't have a failure point, like a liner pool, and it doesn't have a maintenance upkeep like a gunite pool does, where you need to replaster and refinish that every so often. So another pro of fiberglass pools is the shell. We're talking pros and cons. I guess it's hard to keep my brain straight. I'm bouncing all over.
You really are.
Um,
So I would start the pros of fiberglass pools.
So the pros of fiberglass pools: quicker installation. It's definitely a much quicker process from layout to dig. You're able to set the pool in sometimes the first day, typically the second day, and then by day 4 or 5 that pool is fully plumbed and filled with water and running a lot of times. So that's a big thing, is it's a quicker installation, and it's ready to keep your project moving very, very quickly. Another pro is the finish, the actual structure of it being fiberglass, very rigid, very structural finish.
And I think that would be one of the biggest questions that people ask us. Well, how does it do in the winter?
Yeah, everybody thinks that it's going to crack in the winter. You keep it full of water all winter. We live in Michigan. Right now, I think it's 9 degrees outside. Our pool's full of water. It's frozen however far down, but everything gets winterized. And you keep it full of water, it will not crack. So,
yeah, I think the biggest drawback of the fiberglass, and really to me it's like the only one, is it's not customizable. You get what you get. There's very limited options in sizing, and we can only get certain things in a fiberglass pool.
yeah, so the size and the shape is definitely a limiting factor. We really sell around it, though. I mean, we really try to talk to homeowners and say, is this really the best fit for you? And we can do a lot of cool things with a fiberglass shell, and we can incorporate a raised ledge that spills over into the pool, a raised spa, some of those things. And then a big thing for us in Michigan is we have auto covers on majority of the pools. 90% of the pools that we install, we're putting an auto cover on, and so that's a safety factor. But that's one of those things that when we're having that conversation, freeform is typically out when we're doing an auto cover. We have not done an auto cover on a freeform pool, so we pretty much push everybody to do a rectangle pool. But the size and the depth and the shape is a little bit of a limiting factor.
Yeah,
And,
because with the fiberglass pool, the deepest pool that you can get is 8 foot.
Yep. There's 2 models that we can get that are 8 foot, and so all the rest of them are typically 6 to 7 foot. Anything varying in there.
Yeah.
but a lot of really, really nice options. So,
So the fiberglass pools, I think it's a pro. Could could be either way. Depends on where you're at. But the pricing on a fiberglass pool kind of falls in the middle
oh,
of
yeah,
vinyl liner and gunite pools.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of times when we're talking about, a project and trying to see where we want to go with the budget, a lot of people want that low maintenance, that kind of one time shell, and fiberglass is typically going to fall in the middle price range, right in between gunite and vinyl liner.
Yeah.
So that leads us into the next one, which we go into the more budget friendly,
But customizable.
more budget friendly but customizable vinyl liner pool. And we do a steel wall pool with a vinyl liner. A lot of these can be, I mean, they can be, I wouldn't say as customizable as gunite, but they can be pretty dang intricate
Yeah, you can
in
do
what we can do.
the in pool ledges. You can do a lot of
Benches, you can do different step options.
all the different things that you might want in a pool.
Yeah, we don't do we don't personally install the white plastic bump out steps that you saw in the 90s and before. That's not our MO. It's
No.
going to look like a very nice pool in your very nice space. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That being said, I think the biggest con of the vinyl liner pools is the maintenance of them.
Yeah, it's
We get a lot of calls for people wanting vinyl liner replacements.
yeah. Yeah, that liner is a big contributing factor to the maintenance. That's the life of the basically what's holding your water. So
Right. So that initial, install of the pool is going to be a lower cost than a fiberglass or gunite pool, but then, those liners, they're pretty durable and they usually last quite a while, but
they do. It all depends on use, sun. If there's a pebble, if your installer didn't, maybe get all the rock out. If there's a pebble under there that's going to puncture it,
if the wind
groundwater coming up.
blows and a tree branch breaks off into your pool.
So there's really no exact answer on how long it's going to go, how long it's going to last. I just tell people, hey, plan on 5 to 10 years, but we've seen some that are 20 years old. We've seen some fail after the first year. So it's really all over the place.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into, what to consider when
how to choose the right pool for you.
Yeah, what to consider when purchasing a pool. And so some things you got to take in mind. The first one would be budget. What aligns with your budget, and is it going to be, it's typically in a project, the pool is going to be the biggest single item in the whole entire project. So, you've got your pool, your coping, your deck, your surround, your barrier. These are all things you need to take into consideration, but the pool is going to be the biggest one. And so you have to ask yourself, what do I want to spend? But those questions go a little bit deeper in what kind of maintenance do I want to have? What kind of customizability do I want to have?
What depth do I want to have?
What depth, what kind of ledge? Some of the fiberglass can have curved ledges, while the and gunite, can have curved ledges where, the vinyl is just going to be a pretty straight ledge. I don't think you can really do any curves in the liner too much. So those are some things to ask. And typically, do you want to talk like actual prices on this, at least for what we are?
I mean, we can give a ballpark.
Yeah. So
on what it is.
So I mean, your typical vinyl pool is going to be anywhere from a $60,000 to $110,000 install. 110 being a really big deep pool, and 60 being a smaller one. But that's a pretty broad range. But that's about what the vinyl liner is going to fall into, with some exceptions on what you want to do for some certain options. But and then fiberglass is going to be it could really be around there, but
Yeah,
it really depends on.
I think on average, I think it's more on the 80 to 110
Yeah.
for the pool. Just
Yeah.
for the pool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say if you wanted to say, any builder that listens to this, they're gonna kill us. But vinyl, vinyl, 80 grand. Fiberglass can be right around 100. So that's probably a pretty.
And Gunite, I really don't know.
We don't know.
Because
To the moon. I've heard $180,000 pools.
yeah, I was gonna say I've heard almost 200,000 on a
Yep.
quote from someone, which
Yep.
is
I've heard 125 to. I'm sure some of the ones that they do out in California, Texas, all these crazy ones. They're close to $500,000 pools.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. That's not
sky's
what
the
we're.
limit.
Sky's the limit. That's not what we're getting to. So, the next thing is to talk about longevity and durability. You want to think about what do I want to have? How long am I going to be in this house? That's a big one. If you're planning on if you move frequently, you might just want to go with a vinyl pool. If you're going to be here for long term, now you're talking about a fiberglass pool. Finding the right one, and it's going to be a really good long term, low maintenance, durable option.
Yeah, and I would say at that point, if you really can't find a fiberglass pool that works for what you're looking for specifically, then that's when you might want to consider a gunite pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that leads into kind of the aesthetics of what you'd like. So there's different finishes with the 3 different pools, and starting with a vinyl pool, it's a printed design. It has I really don't like the fake tile. It looks super cheesy. There's some
of them look okay. They look good. But
there's some prints that look really good.
Others I'm not really too fond of.
Yeah. Anything like the brown tile, and our customers might have gotten that on one pool. I don't know. I can't remember, but.
You know what, though? It's not our yard, so it doesn't really matter what we think.
It's not our preference. It's your preference. So
we'll put in whatever you like, but
we'll try and steer you to what we like.
Yeah,
think would look good.
We'll give you our aesthetic opinions.
So vinyl is a print.
Really, and there are literally thousands.
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of different options. I mean, it's crazy how many options there are.
It's ridiculous.
And then there's fiberglass. So there's a gel coat finish. It's gonna have some flakes in it, some glitter flakes.
Sparkle.
Yep, it's gonna have some sparkle to it. And our 3 manufacturers have a different type of gel coat. So one has kind of a larger flake to it, and it's got some different sparkle options as far as how much I want to say glistening that you want to have in the gel coat. Another one is kind of like a medium flake and has a lot of sparkle, and we really we really like that one. It's a little less busy. And then the third option has a really tight sparkle. So it's kind of nice that we have these 3 different options, at least from the manufacturers that we use. Yeah. It's nice having that. And we will touch on, I think, our favorite color, and our customers would tend to agree. The favorite color that we like to install is actually a gray pool.
We love gray pools.
Yep. So it gives you a really nice turquoise,
like a Caribbean blue water. It's very turquoisey.
Yeah, not like shallow water Caribbean, but mid-depth Caribbean.
I think it depends on the depth of the water in the pool.
Yeah, well, So the gray pool. Those
honestly,
ones
though, the one that really surprised me that I like is the black.
The black.
I didn't think I would like it as much as I really do.
Yeah, we've done a couple of those, and they're bold.
They are.
They're
I like
bold,
them.
But they look really good.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to consider is when you're picking your pool color is to talk to your builder, talk to us about how clean it's going to look. And so the black, the dark pools, and white are going to tend to show debris more than some of the grays and the blues. And so that's just one more thing to consider. So we'll talk about, maybe some other some other maintenance things, and some other things that go with the pool. One of the biggest things is, we're not going to get into equipment and all that, but I think the next biggest thing is the cover over the pool.
Yeah.
We can talk about the safety cover real quick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I definitely think if you're considering buying a pool, I think the auto cover is one of the biggest things that you can do for your pool. It is a very large investment.
It's a good investment.
However, it is the most safe way to protect anything and anyone from getting in your pool.
Yeah, so it is actually, if you're not familiar with what an automatic safety cover is, it's a canvas cover that sits on a track system, typically underneath your coping, and that slides over the body of water, and it completely closes it off. And that is 100% the safest way to keep people out of the pool, keep anything out of the pool, and close that body of water off and keep it safe. And so
And we say anything, like we've had deer.
Yeah,
walk
we just
across
had deer on
our,
it.
our
Yeah.
auto cover.
Like a week ago.
Yeah. And, other animals, our dog, our cats, our kids have walked across it.
I've taken videos of me on there.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a video online of a
bear.
I think an ATV.
I've seen
I don't know
it.
if the bear is real.
Oh.
The bear
It's
might
probably AI.
I think that was Photoshop. That was manually AI'd, but yeah.
I have seen the ATV though.
I don't know if the bear might be real. Look it up. I don't know.
Google it. I don't know.
If we find it, we'll put a picture in here.
Yeah.
So but the automatic cover, the safety cover, first and foremost for the safety, is a huge thing. In some areas near us, I will say, I don't know about anyone else's area, but in some municipalities near us, the automatic cover actually acts as the barrier for the pool so that we can close out our permits. So when I say barrier, automatic safety cover or fence.
Yes.
So everybody thinks they need a fence. Talk with your builder. We check with the municipalities if you're working with us to see if that's an option. And if it is, we'll talk about, do you want to just have the auto cover or just the fence or both?
And some places will require.
Some places do
both.
require one. They'll require a fence and an auto cover if you want to do an auto cover.
Yeah.
But some of them are for sure you need a fence. Which my personal opinion is,
Anyone
a
can.
determined 5-year-old can climb a 4-foot
Yeah.
pool fence.
Yeah, the
very
fence
easily.
is really not. You always say, like the fence is for like your neighbors or you
Yeah.
know, and the auto cover's for you. Like
Yeah. So the auto cover's for everybody, but and you. Some more benefits of the automatic cover real quick while we're on it. There's some efficiency benefits. So it closes that body of water off completely. So we limit evaporation. So we're not adding water to the pool, which means we're not adding chemicals, which means we're not losing the balance of the water as much. We're keeping rainwater out because there's a pump that goes on it and pumps all the rainwater off. And then it keeps your pool relatively clean from debris. From debris just flying over throughout the seasons.
And I think a big thing, because of where we live, is it helps keep your heat in.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a pool heater, or even if you don't, that auto cover is going to keep the heat in better, so your heater is not running as often and you're using less fuel.
Yeah, it makes a significant difference, I would say. I mean, we open pools up in May, and we typically close them down sometime in October, sometimes November. But that automatic cover, you get those Indian summer days, which are in the fall. You get a real nice warm up. You can have the pool up at 75, 80 degrees, whatever you want it at, and keep that closed, and it's going to hold it in. So you get those few days, your heater's not going to run quite as often. So same thing with early season when you want to fire that thing up. During the summer, it's just typically it's just going to be hot. You get 90-degree days, and it's just your heater's not going to run. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything else that we want to talk about when considering a pool?
I think maybe size. Let's talk about size because
Okay.
there's there's so many people call me and they say I want a 20 by 40 pool, and I ask them that's a lot. I tell them that's a lot of water. Why do you want that much? And they say, well, that's just what I had. That's just I thought the pool size
For
was.
some reason, that has become a standard of thinking that people think that's what a pool needs to be.
Yeah, yeah. So the things that you really need to kind of ask yourself is, how am I going to use this space? So, what does my family size look like? What are my gatherings going to look like? Do I want an 8 foot deep bend or not? If you're going to have an 8 foot deep end, be prepared for people to dive in head first. You're opening yourself up for some liability. You want to think about, the width. You want to think about the heating. You want to think about the chemicals. There's so many things to think about, and just the size of your pool. Are you going to have a ledge in the pool? If you're going to have a ledge in the pool, then it's going to take up some of your swim space. Are you willing to get rid of some of that swim space to have that ledge? Now, we personally love our ledge, but you can do a ledge on the side of the pool that spills into the pool. So maybe you can do an all open pool with a side ledge. Again, a lot to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I would say when it comes to the size too, that makes a huge difference in what type of pool you would be considering because like we mentioned before, those fiberglass pools, they come pre-formed. So there's very specific sizes that we can do. A 16 by 40 is the largest fiberglass pool we can do.
Yeah. So, I think 16 by 40 is definitely on the bigger side for the fiberglass pool. It's the biggest.
And I think it's really funny because once we go on site and you kind of paint out that size pool in someone's yard, they're like,
wow,
that's a lot bigger than I thought it was.
That's a big area. That's a big pool. Our most common size that we put in our area is a 35-foot pool.
Yeah.
So, and it'll be 14 to
sometimes 16.
16 vinyl. We might go 18. Mm-hmm. We might do like an 18 by 32 or something. Yeah. That extra that 2 foot, those 2 foot increments of width actually make more of a difference than the length. I think
so too.
Yeah.
Because I will say our pool is 14 foot wide, and I wish it was a 16 foot wide pool.
Yeah, and we have a bench. Well, so we have a bench that runs down our pool. We'll put a video of our pool in there, but so we have a bench that runs down the one side of our pool, and because it's 14 foot, that bench is about 18 inches, so it takes up some of that space.
And we have kids, so we have a lot of cannonballs going on in our pool, and I do wish it was a little wider for that.
Yeah, so it takes up a little bit of swim space. And I do want to clarify, when we say 14 by 35-foot pool, that is outside edge to outside edge. So that is not actually your swim space. Typically, on a fiberglass pool, I just say you're going to lose about 6 inches on each side, so it's a foot off of everything. So you're going to have 13 foot on a 14-foot wide pool and about 34 foot on a 35-foot long pool. So don't be mad at me or your builder when you go measure it with a tape measure and say, well, this is only 34.2. You said 35. I haven't had anybody do that to me yet, but hopefully they don't.
The same goes for the depth.
The depth
with the fiberglass pools.
Yeah, you have to think. So they measure the depth from the bottom of the pool to the top of the shell, and you're gonna have about 4 inches to 6 inches of water, gap between the top of your shell to the water level that you're not going to have water in. Right. And so that 6 foot pool is actually going to be 5'6".
Yeah.
So if it's 6 inches.
Right.
But, so that's, those are just some things to consider. And we've had, I think the consideration, we've had people, purchase, different size pools for different things. Some of them want to have a bunch of people over, and so we are talking those bigger pools. We have a family that does a lot of. They have 2 kids, but they do a lot of events. I mean, every other weekend they have large amounts of people over, and so that big pool makes the most sense. And and they do have a ledge in there, so they have a 40-foot pool. And then we have on the opposite end of the spectrum, we did a 10 by 20 for a family who has some older kids, and they're high school age kids. You know,
And just want to relax in the pool.
Yep.
And
Yep, it was a very
hang
small space in their yard. One of my favorite spaces, actually. But so they had, just a small pool, and as those kids get older, you know, they're not going to be home as much, and they're going to be off and enjoy their lives, and so that's where the family was like, well, we'll just go to the smaller pool, and then it's not as much to maintain and not as much to upkeep.
And then we get, some couples who have no kids and they just want a big pool anyways.
Yeah.
'Cause they just want, and they typically like to have the ledge
Yeah, yeah,
to chill
yeah.
out on.
I like the ledge.
I do too.
I mean, I like swimming, but I like just chilling on the ledge too. So
Yeah. Those are all things to consider.
all things to consider. So there's a lot to unpack there. I feel like we're missing even more about what to consider, when getting a pool. But that's a pretty rough
I think
and dirty.
those give you a good, solid idea on what type of pool to consider between the three.
Yeah. So we'll do another episode diving more into the two that we install with fiberglass and with vinyl. But hopefully you enjoyed this one on the 3 different types. So thank you guys so much for tuning into us and watching us. We're really excited that we're doing this and putting more information out there for you. If you're liking this content, please subscribe, send us a question, send us a message, follow us on socials, and tune into these topics that we're going to be putting out here every week. So we appreciate it. Thanks for joining us at Elevate at Home. And until next time, keep building your dream outdoor spaces.
Thanks, guys.
Great job.
Thanks.
Let's try to look at my thing here. All right. Check out.